Welcome to the Facebook Live broadcast here. We call the Conversations with Dune Friends. Today we have Chris Moore joining us from the east side of Canada here and from the Ontario area. And I'm going to bring Chris right on camera here, and we're going to start right away here. And so Chris, we're going to have you join us here. All right. Can you hear us? Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Great to be with you.
Wonderful. Hey, so Chris, let me just sort of tell our viewer the a bit of a background here before we get into our conversation. So I'm trusting that everybody can hear us. And so Chris Moore is the founder and CEO of the Leadership Academy and also the host of the Leadership 360 broadcast. And today he's going to talk about a number of things, but really during his career, he has many opportunities to grow and develop as a leader. And he's worked with other great leaders who have taught him how to be effective in leading teams and organizations, how to bring your whole self to work, and how to create opportunity for others. So he has joined, really enjoy working in both private and public sectors and pursued his own goals and dreams, and he realized many of those as well along the way, and travel the world speaking of change, transformation, and what it means to have fulfillment and freedom in your work. And he has had the opportunity to work with many talented people over the career, the long illustrious career, and continued on here. People whom he had the privilege to coach and mentor and become, their best version of themselves. So recently, Chris has decided to turn his attention and passion to really a bit of a mission to dedicate his time and effort to help others become the best version of themselves. So Chris, welcome. And anything to add before we get into our conversation here?
Oh, there's so much we can talk about, but let's get into it.
You bet. So I know that you lived in Edmonton for a little while, so maybe tell us, because this is sort of many of our Edmontonians probably tuning right now. Tell us your time in Edmonton and what your thoughts were of Edmonton. Was it too cold or what?
Well, I used to tell people I went to Edmonton for the opportunity, not the weather. But I figured if over 1 million people could figure out how to live, there, and it's not cold all the time. It's beautiful in the summers, and we just had to figure out what it meant to be part of the community. And when we were thinking about heading, out west, and I had worked for Enbridge before, and there was a possibility back, years ago that we were going to go out west, but we never did. And so when we decided to move out, it was really, we didn't know anybody. How do we connect? But Edmonton is a fantastic city. It's one of those places where, we would move back to, in a heartbeat if it wasn't for the rest of our family being in Ontario. The people are so friendly. And, now with kind of less travel, less cars on the road, less manufacturing, the air in Ontario is almost as fresh as it is in Edmonton. So, great people. We still have a lot of friends there. And it's like when you leave a place, whether it's a place that you've lived in or a place you've worked, you still stay kind of emotionally connected and attached. And so you keep track of what's going on. You follow some of the people, the mayor of Edmonton, Don Iveson. I worked with him for a number of years when he was the city councillor. You follow what he's doing and other leaders. So yeah, it's a fantastic place to be, and we do miss it for sure.
Yeah. So I know you came to Edmonton. It was in early 2000 or something like that. And tell us about your previous kind of work in the, I guess mostly in the Ontario area.
Yeah, absolutely. I arrived. It was the 15th of October 2008, and prior to that, had spent all of my working career in Ontario in a kind of a mix of public and private sector work. So when I was in Edmonton, I was the chief information officer at the city, Prior to that, I was the chief information officer at the city of Brampton
Hmm.
in Ontario. And I used to, when I would tell people I was from Brampton when I moved to Edmonton, I said Brampton, they heard Brantford. And then the next question was about Wayne Gretzky. Um, and so, no, they're two very different cities.
Yeah.
Um, and all of my career, I've been working in technology, whether it's been in an organization leading technology. I started my career selling computers back in the day. I was working for Radio Shack and trying to sell their computers when IBM came out with their computers. So it wasn't the best line to be selling, but spent time at Deloitte before the Deloitte and Touche merger, doing some consulting and doing some internal IT support. I spent time in a system integration company in Oakville, providing technology solutions and implementation. So I've been very fortunate, kind of, in public sector, in private sector, in service delivery roles, in client roles. So I tell a lot of vendors that I work with when I'm in an organization, I said, I've been in your shoes, or when I've worked in a consulting or a system integration company, I find I can connect better with, with somebody who's leading technology in a company because I've done that as well. So yeah, it was, it's been interesting career. I haven't I think I've worked for 12 or 13 different companies. Moved around a fair bit physically as well. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of connections, and a lot of interesting work and interesting people working with and for it too.
Yes, in terms of leadership, if I ask you what's top of mind for some of the leadership traits that are really important in, particularly these times of COVID and the pandemic, are there any sort of that are pops up to top of mind? I mean, there's many qualities, but any that are particularly relevant or needed in times of COVID?
Yeah, I mean, times like this, or even times not like this, I think the key things that are needed are, just be human and connect with people.
Hmm.
I hear a lot of people talk about empathy and being empathetic. Um, I think it's just, it's about being real. We've seen a lot of political leaders, challenged with the current situation, whether it's, premiers of provinces or heads of state or governors in the US. And it, when the pressure's on and when it's tough and you've got to make tough choices, and it affects people and people's lives and life and death, that's really when the, kind of the strong leaders emerge. And it's people who are, thoughtful, methodic, who take, who take advice. One of the things that I chose to learn and adapt when I was in Edmonton was, in the past, I would come up with an idea. I think it was a great idea and I would run with it. And when I was in Edmonton, I had a lot of great people working with me and surrounding me and supporting me, and great leaders on my team. And what I chose to do was listen, take their advice, but not just take their advice, change my plans or change the direction I was going to go in. And because of, the input, their great ideas, I'm only one person. If I can get, collective from other people, it's more
Hmm.
thoughtful, more deep.
Right.
And when I did that and changed that direction, I made sure I told them, I'm making this directional change because of the input from you. So I think it's about being open to advice too.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So, Chris, were you able to share the feed or the video to your Facebook page as well?
I did.
Yeah. Let me do that as well. I thought I did, but I just don't see it yet here. So let me. It's certainly broadcasting on the Facebook page, but let me just confirm that.
I did that, and I shared it on LinkedIn too.
Wonderful. So, your thoughts, Chris, about you know, in general. I mean, you have a leadership 360 broadcasts. Is this or later a time to maybe share some of those sort of clips and sort of talk about that a little bit, Chris? And I know you also started the Leadership Academy as well. Tell us about the Leadership Academy. What's your vision there?
My vision there is really around training and development, coaching, executive coaching, leadership coaching. I started that in February this year, and then March came and things have kind of slowed down a bit. I had a number of meetings set up with people, and they either got postponed or they turned into into video calls. But my vision there is to be able to have training, to deliver training. Classroom may be a challenge. I was thinking about online. That may make more sense. But to make sure that people have the opportunity to develop and to understand, a lot of things that it took me years to figure out, or to take advice or ideas from people, and really around leadership development and coaching. So yeah, that's the vision, and working on that.
Yeah, perhaps I will kind of just share the page here, the
Sure.
Leadership Academy website. Let me do that. So go ahead and tell us a few more things about it while I cue it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll talk a bit about the podcast and how it kind of relates. Back over the holidays earlier this year, when I was putting together my plan to launch this business and the opportunity and the consulting, I thought, okay, what do I want to do to create content, create value, to promote the work that I'm doing? So I decided that I would do the podcast. I knew nothing about doing a podcast. It's easy to listen to them. And one of the reasons why I decided to do the podcast is that it's easy to consume. People are probably consuming less podcasts now because, they're not commuting or they're not going to the gym and some of that. But I still think there's value in it. I should, say to you that what you're doing with this and, with your friends and connecting with people and creating content and, valuable information for people is great. It's a lot of work, as you probably know. But it's one of those things where it's, it's important work. And anytime, I don't know if this happens for you after you get off of one of these conversations, but anytime I end the podcast, which is really just a conversation with somebody really focused around leadership, I always feel inspired and energized, having those conversations with people. So that's part of the background of the podcast as well. Yeah. So if you've got the site up there, I don't know if you want to play one of the podcasts or.
I just want to make sure that our guest is aware that if they comment on the video there on the live feed, we can certainly see those comments, and Chris can respond to your questions if you have questions for Chris.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm going to play one of those. So tell me which one to play there, Chris.
Which ones are there? Can you just make the website a little larger? I think it's the last 5. Well, they're all. Yeah, I mean, play the one with Ken. Play a few minutes of that if you want. Ken brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to his new role. The appointment of the commissioner is a critical and defining moment in the establishment of Fire Rescue Victoria, and the Melbourne Fire Brigade Board looks forward to working with Ken in the transition to Fire Rescue Victoria. Well, Ken, welcome to the Leadership 360 podcast.
Chris, it's a pleasure to join you.
As people know, listening to the podcast, I'm talking to all kinds of people and leaders about leadership. And, my first question for you, from your perspective, either experience or observation, what are some of the attributes of a great leader?
Yeah, sure. So for me, Chris, honesty is certainly at the top. Having trust with people, so being trustworthy, being empathetic, confident, but with humility. So there needs to be an element of being humble there. Yeah, putting people first, I think, is an important attribute for leaders, and you know, what I've learned over my career is really important never to judge people. Don't assume. Ask the right questions and find out really what you know what you're dealing with at the basic level.
Right, right. Yeah, fantastic advice. So, what have you learned from some of the great leaders that you've worked with or worked for?
Yeah, you know, I think being a listener.
All right, Chris, tell us more about. So you started this this year sometime, right? And
Yeah, I can't. It was. Let me go back and see. My first. It was February 11th is when I launched it,
mhm,
and I decided I would do weekly episodes, and that's working out so far.
mhm.
It's interesting when you stop what Ken was talking about there. One of the first things that he started talking about was being a great listener, and I had a message, and there was a comment on a post recently from Gord Stang, who worked with me when I was in Edmonton, um, commenting about somebody else's interview and how the person didn't talk about listening. And to Gord, one of the great tools that he used for years was listening, and I would agree with him. So it was interesting that Ken was talking about that, and important for us to listen to people and listen generously. But I just thought it was neat that played. The I started the podcast, as I said, to talk to people about leadership, to have those conversations. A lot of the people that I've interviewed are people that I've worked with or worked for, people that I know, kind of know their story. And I want, I've got some questions that I asked to generate the conversation, but it's really giving people the opportunity to tell their story from their perspective. And, the reason why I called it Leadership 360 was I want to talk about leadership from all angles and all perspectives, not just talk about people who are leaders, but talk about people who maybe don't have organizational responsibility, people who might not see themselves as a leader because they're not, a CIO or a CEO or a vice president, but they still have a role and responsibility. Robin Sharma has that book, talks about being a leader without a title. So, helping, having those conversations with people. And it's fascinating as I talk to different people, you get to hear their story, kind of their career story, or talk to people that have retired and then gone into a whole different line of work from what they were doing before. And it's just, it's great there's so much valuable information that people have and great experiences. And it's great just to create a platform for that.
You bet. So I agree. As much as leadership has broad kind of implications and broad reach, it starts with the person, right? I mean, you have to kind of develop yourself first. And I know you in your leadership academy, you focus a lot on developing the self, before influencing others and whatnot. I would like to maybe scroll through your Leadership Academy site here, and if you could just comment on various aspects of it. I'll just be off camera here, but
yeah, sure. So the first aspect was figuring out how to make a website that works, and there's a lot of great tools out there. But it's interesting, and you're doing something similar, with your maybe just stop there and then I'll pick it up with your, with this conversation that you're doing and, doing the video and integrating all kinds of other things, but you're doing it all yourself, which is, tremendous. But it's a lot of work. And, what I really miss are the people that I've worked with in the past who, worked with me and helped me get things done, because now, much like you, I'm on my own trying to figure this all out, and it's a fair bit of work. It's also satisfying when you can figure it out, but it is a fair bit of work. Yeah, so I put the website together, focus on executive coaching and coaching for leaders and teams. A lot of the time, people on a team, they need that development together. Executive coaching, and in the past in my career, I've had coaches that have helped me, and a lot of it is just making sure that you're self-aware and understanding how you show up, and what you say, how that impacts other people. If you want to keep scrolling down, I've done some coaching for entrepreneurs or people who are starting a venture. They may have, a vision, idea, or a dream about a product or a service that they're really passionate about, but they don't necessarily know, kind of all of the aspects or details of running an operation. And so provided some coaching and there as well. Coaching for presence. So when I say presence, I mean, like how you show up, how to present, how to be present in that conversation. And then these just some of the details about all the different areas, if you want to just scroll through that. This was Chris making a simple website. I did get some feedback from some people. They thought it was good. Included some reviews there and bio and contact. So yeah, that is the website.
Mm-hmm. Yes, entrepreneurship, right? We, as I say in my sort of conversation with some people, it's good to be a big fish in a small pond, and it's also good to be a smaller fish in a much bigger pond. And I
Right.
see, we always learn different things and apply different things, but being an entrepreneur will teach you a few different things that you may not have focused on while running a large corporation or government or whatever, right?
Yeah, they're very different. We were on a cruise once down in the Bahamas, and we stopped in St. Lucia and did a tour. We hired a driver and toured around, and he was an entrepreneur and running his own kind of tour business. But what he would say was, better to be the head of a mouse than the tail of a lion. So,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, as you know, because you've done it all to some degree in terms of working in organizations and doing your own thing and running organization. There's pros and cons to either side, right? And what I enjoy on the entrepreneur side, or working for yourself and having clients and working for other people, is the freedom. But then there's the pressure of revenue generation, right? And I'm much better at coaching and strategy and consulting than I am at business development. I guess if I was great at business development, then I would be in sales. But then you still have to figure out how to do it all, or a little bit of everything, right?
So if you could share, Chris, I realize it could be kind of somewhat random, but what would be top of mind when you think about the kind of challenges that a lot of younger leaders who maybe haven't been in that role for a long time, maybe they've been quite high performers and practitioners, and now sort of into a more leadership focus, what would be some of the key challenges that they often grapple with, and what would be some of your kind of advice to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, in thinking about people that I've worked with and coached kind of on that front, a lot of issues that I think people deal with at that space, it even starts with, do I even want to be a leader, or do I want to lead in the organization or lead an organization? A lot of subject matter experts or individual contributors, they are really great at their area of expertise, but don't even know if they want to lead. And I think a lot of that comes from kind of bad leadership examples, or the fact that leading is not telling. It's about having a vision and bringing leadership and to the table. It's like a coach of a sports team who is also a player. They know how to play the game, but they also know how to get the best out of people. And so a lot of the people I've talked to recently who are in that position, first they have to decide, okay, I do want to lead. So that's something to, to look forward to. Then the next thing that I encourage them to do is put together a plan. Like, what's your 5 or 10-year plan? Years ago, career plans were big things for people. They seem to have dropped away, or a lot of people think that, the corporation they work in is going to make a plan for them, but you have to own your plan. And then you have, if you don't have a plan, then you're going to fail, because, like, did you achieve what you wanted to do? Or, did things come together in an order, or did you work on something so that it could build to something else? I think a lot of other, younger people, or people maybe with less business experience, they get caught up by things like, conflict, or, peers or other people that know how to push their buttons, or how to challenge them, or, help, working with difficult people. Sometimes it's just time, or trying different things, or having, somebody coach you to get you through that. So, a lot of it for people is, getting hung up on some of those things, which, people call politics, or, however they label it. So,
Yeah.
but I think the biggest thing is, having a plan, having a direction, and then executing that plan and adjusting on the way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, tell us maybe just a brief, maybe story, or sort of your take on the difference between working for like a big kind of organization, such as the City of Edmonton or City of Hamilton or whatever have you, versus now being on your own, being entrepreneurial. What are some of the few things that you want to highlight there for our viewers who may, in times of challenge here, be shifting their priorities, or their role going forward? What have you found about that shift?
So a lot of people talk about, working in a big organization. They talk about security and some of those things. It's probably obvious, but whether it's a pandemic or whether it's a change in business, there really is no security. So you have to, be flexible. In the past, people talk about being flexible or being agile, kind of change is the new norm. We've all heard, you've probably heard, I think people are maybe overusing the word pivot in the last, 8 weeks. Their intentions are good, but, it's really nothing new. It's just happening at a faster pace. I think when and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, a couple of things. There's differences and similarities between public sector and private sector, and not everybody can go, work in both kind of organizations. But when you leave a large organization and you're on your own, I think a lot of people that I talk to, you need to find kind of a similar rhythm that you would when you were in a large corporation, because the large corporation kind of creates that structure and the rhythm. When you're on your own, you are the rhythm. And you would know more than that about me, because I don't really understand music in terms of playing music. I mean, you do. Just look behind you. My wife is a musician. My two sons are great musicians, but the only thing that I'm allowed to play is the remote control for the TV. But rhythm is really important, and finding that. And when you're, most of the world is in isolation. Some people are coming out of it. We're having this shared experience of the change with the pandemic, and a lot of people have been and continue to work from home, and maybe will continue to work from home. And as humans, we want that connection, that community connection. And that's why people, participate in community groups and bowling leagues and different things. And work is that for a lot of people, right? It's their community connection, and it's hard on people. And as I've heard people, it's probably harder on the extroverts than the introverts to be kind of socially disconnected from people. But when you're on your own, what's important is to maintain those connections, and those business connections or work connections. So, you enjoy the freedom, the flexibility. You need to have a plan, more so than you would when you were in an organization, because the organization creates the plan for you. But one thing that I will say is that when I've been on my own working, what I really miss are the people who I worked with, who maybe helped me or worked for me or had a role to play, like an executive assistant role or a communications role or a change role or a project role. When you're on your own and you've got to kind of do everything, that's really when you miss those people. So what I try to remind myself is, if I find myself back in an organization working in a structure, is to appreciate those people at the time. Don't wait until you miss them to appreciate them.
Yes. And COVID is a great example of how I'm sure there are many people who are really kind of reminded of how much they should appreciate the things that we often take for granted in quote unquote regular normal times, whether it's just the human interactions as an example, right?
Yeah, and people get caught up in the day to day, and I think this, as much as I want to get back out there, the thing that I miss the most are our kids and our grandchildren. In terms of being able to interact versus at a distance. But this time has been a huge pause or reset or whatever word you want to use. And as much as nobody would wish a pandemic or this kind of a situation, it's really been an opportunity for people to have that forced change. I'm interested. My patterns have changed over the last 8 weeks. My wife has been working from home as well, and she works for Loblaw. And so, all of a sudden, people are realizing that, grocery stores and supply chains and all those things are really important. And her core work that she does, not during pandemic times, is she's in learning and development, and she develops training and courses and classroom or online, and she, along with a number of other people on the team, have been seconded to recruitment. And I kudos to her, because she's led volunteer organization in the past, and she's done recruitment, but she's spending her days in, I think on week 6 now, calling people, and her area is the east coast of Canada. So kind of Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and in there, screening people for work, because of the need to have people, in the grocery stores. There's additional functions, wiping down shopping carts and different things, and the need for staff. So she's had to pivot and change. And, I'm in my sub office. Like, she and I have a home office together. And we, if we're working from home and just working, we're working down there together. But sometimes I find it hard to concentrate because she's on the phone. She's asking people. I could probably do her work now. I've heard her ask the question so many times. But I had to get away. I had to make a home office within the home office. And so because I've been doing my podcast recording still, I had to set up. I've set up in the room that we call the sleepover room when the grandkids are here. So they're clearly not here sleeping over. So I've set up in here for now, and I might be here for some time.
Yeah, I love the background, and you got the lights that change. You say you're not into music, but it sounds like you are well lit, and the stage is changing colors there. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So what too, but haven't turned them on today.
I'll see what my youngest son says. His profession is lighting for live events and concerts, and he does other things in that space. And clearly, he's not doing that right now because all that stuff shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see what he says. So no, I wanted to have a backdrop that was, kind of useful. I see so many things, and I think the common one seems to be bookcases, right? In people's books. And,
Yeah.
And that, I haven't figured out, I haven't gotten like a green screen and, superimpose myself in space or something, but I wanted something that would be, kind of thoughtful, but not a bookcase. It's fascinating though with, having video calls with people and different people. And I'm sure you've done the same thing. It's it's like you're inviting somebody into your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whether I'm doing having a meeting or whether I'm doing a podcast interview, I have the video on when I do that because I find it easier to talk to somebody, interact with somebody if I can see them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm talking to them, I'm also kind of looking at other, looking beyond them in their home to see what's there. So I don't know what this says about me.
You are multifaceted, and I was going to ask you. This is a bit of a complex question, so
sure.
Tell us what's sort of top of mind when you think about it. So the question is, when you think about leadership in today's sort of environment versus, let's say, leadership 20, 30 years ago, if you could highlight 2 or 3 major differences, what might they be? Things that sort of evolve over time and are quite different today than it was, let's say, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think, and when I think back on my career 30 years ago, I try to think about the leaders that I had and, some of the attributes. I think, in today's world, and I'm really excited about the, what the pandemic brought in terms of our need to work remotely, because I've been a huge proponent of kind of work from anywhere for a very long time. Mm-hmm. When I was in Edmonton, I had the opportunity to work with the team there to shift the city to Google as a platform, which it wasn't about, Google is better than, Office 365. It was giving people the ability to work kind of from any device, anywhere, anytime. That was the idea, giving people that flexibility. And so, I think in today's world, we need to have that flexibility, and not just in a pandemic time. But if people's life situations are different with, family responsibilities, parents, children, they need the flexibility. And one of the things that concerns me about people, and I've worked for people who are kind of anti, working from home, and all the stories, about, they want to see people, in the office. I think one of the big things that's changed in the last 20 or 30 years, or even, in the last 30 days, is that organizations have figured out that they can be productive without people being in the office. Mm-hmm. And I talked to some people who believe that they're actually more productive. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that challenge is how we measure productivity. Mm-hmm. And, are we really measuring it, properly? I think that is going to bring a huge challenge for people that own, office buildings and, are building buildings right now because there's a demand. I think there's going to be less of a demand. So, what are we going to do with all that space? I think too, some of the leadership style from the past was more command and control, where people would, tell people what to do, which is not possible. And because, as a leader, you can't keep track of what everybody's doing every day and tell them what to do. I mean, you need to treat people like mature adults and, give them the space to do what they know needs to be done. And, don't kind of hang over them and try to figure out what they're doing. And I think when it comes to, organization structures, there needs to be, I think there's more flexibility now, but than there was in the past, but we need so much more, and we need people to have the space to do what they know needs to be done. And we need leaders who are, showing up like real people, being transparent, being open, being the same person that they are, at work and at home, and not putting on a facade. There's all kinds of kind of current day examples of how to be a terrible leader, and we don't need more of that. But it's really about trusting people, and giving them the flexibility to have that fulfillment that they're looking for, and to make a contribution. So
yeah, it sounds like what you're alluding to, what you're aiming at is, or kind of pondering, is the idea of as much as technology is improving and we're in an extremely high-tech world, the really high-touch leaders are going to be really effective in inspiring people, in trusting them, in really clearing the roadblocks for them, and being the advocate, being, shall I say, a servant leader. That's going to be a real impactful kind of trend as we kind of move into the future here, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I don't follow war analogies or war at all, unless it's a good analogy. But I worked for a city manager years ago who really felt it was the leader's responsibility to provide air support. So if you're fighting a ground battle, and you never fight a battle on more than one front, but you need the leader to be up in the air, providing air support, looking over the next horizon for people. And, absolutely, in terms of servant leaders, or, serving the people that you are leading, for sure. But I think the other thing that's really important for leaders is developing other leaders. And so, giving people, I'm in the boomer generation, kind of the end of the boomer generation, but still a boomer. And I have maintained for years, probably the last, 10 or so years, that as boomers, we've got kind of a, one big responsibility today, or maybe two responsibilities in work, is to develop, the emerging leaders is one, and the other one is to get out of the way to give them opportunities to lead. And so I think, absolutely being a great servant leader, but also developing leaders in that same, space and mindset.
You bet. I mean, I've heard, I forgot who I heard it from, so I'm going to have to look it up here, but I heard it's been said that, the quality or the caliber of a leader is often judged by the caliber of the people that follow them, the people that they lead. So, in our leadership development journey, we have to get to a point, if we're not already, where we are leading a lot of really impactful leaders who happen to choose to follow us because we have a vision that they care to partake in, and not just followers because they don't know how to lead and are fearful of leading, but in fact, we're leading a lot of leaders who are perhaps even better than we are in our own rights. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So my observation when people hire people is that they typically hire people like themselves. That's kind of a natural thing. So I think you have to be aware of that. You need to hire people for roles that fit the role, not because they're like you. But I think it's important to as a leader, especially if you're a leader of leaders, right? To hire people who potentially have, greater skills than you, or greater capacity, or who can do, don't be challenged by people who could be, do more than you or take something further. I really believe, and maybe it's because I've worked in different organizations, but every leader has a season and a role to play in an organization. And then, you don't want to stay there past your best before date, right? Like you don't want to be that, milk in the fridge that's, 2 months old. And so I think some of it too is know when it's time to move on. And I've always been intentional about developing people, who could take my role after I left. And, it's not easy. But it's an important thing to do, because whether the organization chooses to have that person in the role or not is really the question. But I've had the opportunity to work coach, mentor, develop so many people, so many great people that have gone on to do, things, bigger things than I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And, I like to stay connected to those people, and I watch their career and, watch what they're doing. And I've told some of those people, and they'll, if they're listening, they'll remember the conversation, but I've said to them, I'm just going to, enjoy your career from the sidelines, because I feel like I had a little role to play in helping you get, to where you are or earlier in your career. And so, I guess a lot of people call that legacy too, right? So I think it's important when we're leading in organizations, not just to be, leading and doing the work of the day, but developing people who will continue on in that organization or go somewhere else and pursue, their dream, or, further their career. And, and you've had a role to play in helping them get to that point.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So in other words, we have a mission we're on, but hopefully in kind of together, working on that mission together, we also build the people who might be able to take the mission beyond our vision, in fact, or in fact able to apply to a different vision that they might have in the future that I have no idea of, by virtue of having been developed along the way. And I agree with you. Well, some of my most satisfying moments in my career has been when I've been able to contribute to others people's success and be able to kind of watch them grow and watch them. So that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and understand, if you're in a role for a season, try to understand what your purpose is. And it's not all, absolutely it's get the work done, develop the strategy, implement things, but be very aware of the people around you and what those people are looking to do and achieve. Mm-hmm. And, I've, much like you, worked, with technology for years. The technology works, or, it almost implements itself to some degree, but it's the people that need the support and, encouragement and feedback. There's, I enjoy when I need to give somebody feedback, I ask the question. I would say, "Hey, Dune, do you mind if I give you some feedback?" It's almost like you asking me for feedback. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure at some point somebody will say no, but nobody said no to me. Mm-hmm. And that it opens up the conversation, right? So it's important to listen.
Oh, great. Listen, Chris, as sort of we round the corner on the hour here, I'd like to maybe just ask, are there aspects of leadership that you think could help us get through this difficult time of COVID, all of the uncertainty and the, kind of unscripted future that we're going to all face? What would be some tips or ideas that you would suggest to our viewers that may help them navigate this somewhat uncharted waters here coming up?
Whether it's leadership or not, I think, it's important just to have gratitude and to thank the people around you. Mm-hmm. And simple things, something that my wife has helped me to understand because she's in the middle of it. But, people who are working in grocery stores and, cashiers and that, I mean, they're putting themselves at risk because they don't know who is coming in and who's sick. So, just thank them for what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Gratitude, I think, is really important. I think, I've been thinking a lot and talking to people a lot about, we are not going back to the way things were. That is really obvious. And there's no, when we get back to the way things were, people talk about the new normal, but they don't know what it is. So humans are fascinating. And, again, I've never studied psychology. I'm probably an armchair psychologist, but humans are fascinating. And you're seeing some of it play out. Humans are sense-making beings. They're just trying to make sense of what's going on or of a situation, right? So that's why people want to know the future, because they want to know how to respond or how to react. Mm-hmm. Some people are trying to figure out, how did this, COVID thing happen? Well, how did SARS happen? Mm-hmm. Who knows, right? It's important for some people, but for most people, what's more important is kind of, what's next. And I think a lot of people are struggling right now with, they don't know if, the plans they have for the summer or the fall, if they're postponed or on hold.
Mhm.
And there's not a lot of control that people have. So I think it's just,
Mhm.
being patient, having some little things along the way that you can control that are next.
Mhm.
And then, being ready to embrace whatever the next thing is. We're not, we've had to make some adjustments in how we live and operate. Those things are probably not going to go away. We need to figure out the next place that we're going to, and what normal looks like, and just be thankful and have gratitude for the people around you.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like the three that you articulated really are, if I can summarize them, really gratitude, patience, and flexibility, right?
Right.
Gratitude, patience, and flexibility. Interestingly enough, those would have been really useful 100 years ago as well. So
Right.
in some ways, our lives hasn't changed that much, and humanity and what's required of us to be thriving is pretty stable throughout times, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Gratitude,
for sure.
patience, and flexibility. I mean,
Yeah, and hope and people talk about, if you don't learn from the past, you're going to repeat the errors of the past. And there's very few people that were around during the Spanish flu and that pandemic, and who
mhm,
could advise. And I will absolutely not be around in 2120.
mhm.
But it's like, let's be thoughtful about these things, and let's see what we can learn, and and prepare and adjust. And I'm trying not to use the word pivot, but
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. Well, we have a bit of time left to kind of have you wrap us up here and sort of take us home. If there's anything you want to share in terms of photos or video, anything like that, feel free to let me know. But however you like to kind of take us home on this interview hour here, Chris.
well, I have thousands of photos, but I'm not going to share any of those. I was going through, your computer has so much storage, right? And then
Mm.
every once in a while you have to clean things up. And I was going through that the other day. I think, it's just, I think it's really important in any situation, whether you're talking about leadership or organizations or families, to, to have a plan and to be thinking about what's next and be prepared to adjust. Back around 2001, I put together a 10-year plan. I updated it, I think, in 2004. I have not kept it current. Well, I guess I have to some degree, because my wife and I won't work forever, so we do have a plan to retire, and then during that time, we'll do things in that, as part of that plan. So we do have that plan. So I guess I do have, I have maintained it. But I actually use my 10-year plan a fair bit when I'm coaching people, just as an example, of what I put together. So I think, closing words, one of the things that I say on my podcast, kind of at the end before we wrap things up, is I started asking people if they had any words of wisdom, and then people were, I think, challenged by that because they didn't think they were wise necessarily. So then I shifted it to say, any last words, but I think it's about, words of wisdom. It's about, if you don't have a plan, put a plan together. I mean, and people have time now to do that, and, and be prepared for, whatever is next. And then also, just as important, be prepared to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll encourage people to listen to the podcast. I think it's July 1st when I will publish my interview with you.
Ah, wonderful. And, I was told that I have a radio face, so I'm glad that would be on a podcast. That would be just my medium right there, Chris. Now, again, I just want to remind our viewers here. It's the Leadership Academy, which is the one that Chris has started recently here. And Chris is the founder and CEO of the Leadership Academy. And you can see it on screen here that I've sort of pulled up. In fact, I'm going to... but that's one part. The other part is the Leadership 360 podcast as well. So lots of stuff to kind of check out if you're into leadership and leadership development for yourself or your organization or your team. Check Chris out. It's theleadershipacademy.ca is the website. Let me know if I got that correct, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thank you.
So theleadershipacademy.ca, and then the podcast, you can, I think, get to it from this website, or you can also get to the kind of podcast directly. I have provided those links in the kind of the advertising post there, so you can find it there. But that would be the now you're on LinkedIn, as most of us professional kind of folks are. I'm imagining you're pretty open to connecting with people who have similar interests and similar background, and possibly even some common connections and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Leadership 360 podcast, one of the things that I learned is that if you use the right podcast platform, it does all the distribution for you. So I'm on Spotify and iTunes and Google Play, and you just have to search for Leadership 360. So
you bet. And it's on buzzsprout.com. Sprout, like, bean sprouts. So Buzz, like Buzz Lightyear, and sprout.com. And then you got /859330. But, if you're on LinkedIn with Chris, there's a feature connection thing here. Linked here, and if you're on his Leadership Academy website, you'll be able to see a link to this as well. So he's not hard to find, Chris Moore. And so thank you so much, Chris, for spending time with us on the lunch hour here. I know in Toronto where you are, or are you in Toronto? No, not Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto, yeah.
Ontario. I know you used to live different places, but you're now in Toronto. So in Toronto, you are approaching 3 o'clock, in fact, a little bit past 3 o'clock here. So I really want to thank you for your time and conversation here and sharing your experiences and insights with us here today. And really wish you all of the best with your endeavor, whether it's entrepreneurial or otherwise here, with certainly with the Leadership Academy. And come back again sometime and tell us how this whole Leadership Academy is evolving after COVID, because I know it's on a bit of a different trajectory right now. But give us an update along the way. Absolutely. And so with that, any final words to our viewers before we wrap it up here, Chris?
The only thing I'd say is thank you for all the work that you're doing and the content you're creating and the platform that you're giving people and all the hard work. It's to be commended. So it's been great being on your show, and I love the power of technology and all these platforms, and how we can, without any background or experience, how we can easily become broadcasters.
Yes. Anybody can be on TV these days. But
that's right. Very true.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much, Chris, for everything in the last hour here. And so thank you, everyone, for being with us here. And this has been Conversations with Dunes and Friends. And in this case, it's Chris Moore from the Toronto area, and was in Edmonton for a number of years here as the CIO, the Chief Information Officer for the City of Edmonton. That's how I met him. And so thanks again, Chris, for joining us. And have a great afternoon, Chris.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
So join me again each weekday. I'm going to do this every weekday until further notice. Each weekday for more talks about life, leadership, and personal development. If you want to be notified of future broadcasts and continue the conversation here with us on Facebook, please like our Facebook page located at Conversations with Dune and Friends. That's where this video is being broadcast through right now. So Conversations with Dune and Friends. So with that, I would like to bid you a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are, all over the world there, and have a great day, and enjoy the rain if you happen to be in the Edmonton area. We're going to have a lot of rain over the next little while. And so with that, thank you so much and have a great day.